Hello, I'm Laquesta Burak and welcome to Focus on Africa. Our top stories this Friday. Step down now. The leader of Sudan's largest opposition party joins calls for President al-Bashir to go.
The most important demand of the Salvation Charter is that the regime must leave and be replaced with a transitional national government tasked with achieving a comprehensive and just peace.
As the protests and clashes continue, we find out what life is really like for people living in Sudan.
People can't get cash out of the banks. The ATMs are not operating anymore.
The row over a school hijab ban in Kenya could now be heading to the Constitutional Court. Also in the programme, the threads that connect. We visit a family business in Zambia that has the country's uniform market all sewn up.
It makes me really proud because when I see kids walking down the street with their ties, with their jersey, with their little shirts, pleated skirt, I know that's been made by us.
And coming up in the sport, former Nigeria international Victor Moses completes his loan move to Turkish club Fenerbahce. Hello there and thank you for joining us on Focus on Africa, coming to you from BBC World News. Well, the pressure seems to be piling on Sudan's president as protests against the government now roll into their 6th week. So today, the leader of the country's largest opposition party also decided to join the fray. It was during Friday prayers that Sadiq al-Mahdi told hundreds of worshippers at a mosque in Omdurman that the president, al-Bashir, must resign and he should do it immediately. Well, following his address, hundreds of protesters took to the streets, and there were reports that police had fired tear gas to try to disperse them. Now, the official death toll stands at 30. However, activists are telling us that as many as 50 people have been killed since the unrest began in December.
The most important demand of the Salvation Charter is that the regime must leave and be replaced with a transitional national government tasked with achieving a comprehensive and just peace, guaranteeing the human rights and freedoms, implementing an economic relief programme to alleviate the sufferings of people, implementing alternative reform programmes and holding a national constitutional conference to write the country's constitution.
So that was the leader of the largest opposition party at Friday prayers early. We've got a report now for you from Ansoy and a warning that some of you might find the pictures disturbing.
A street fight that ends in death. They've killed him, the protesters shout. These are the longest running protests in Sudan's history. Young people, mainly professionals, are putting up a defiant front against the government. Security forces have responded brutally, but that is only driving more people to the streets. The protests began last month as the cost of living rose sharply.
We pay money, we pay taxes, we pay fees. The streets are filled with rubbish and the water supply has been cut and the electricity price is increasing daily.
Hajir recently lost her brother, a doctor. He was shot in a crowd. They say he was helping a young protester who had been injured. He died later while undergoing treatment.
Everybody knew he was humble and nice. He didn't like conflict or confrontation.
احتسبوا مقتل الشهيد دكتور بابكر وطالبوا بالقصاص ممن قتله وهو معلوم لدينا ميليشيات.
We know who killed him. Dr. Babikir Abdi Halim, we know all the militia of the regime, whether they are security forces or intelligence forces. We call them forces of fear and destruction.
President Omar al-Bashir has blamed the deaths on infiltrators and foreign agents. This week, he sought political and economic support from Qatar. But that has not helped to calm tensions at home. Protests have been spreading to other towns. Organisers are promising more next week. These young professionals are resolute. Most of them have only ever known one national leader. But now they say his time is up. Anne Soy, BBC News.
Well, here at the BBC, we've been speaking to an activist in Khartoum who explained that the problems took us through the problems that people are facing on a daily basis.
The economy of Sudan has been deteriorating dramatically in the past few years and more even in the past few months. There is no cash, there are shortages in cash, in bread, in fuel. People can't get cash out of the banks. The ATMs are not operating anymore. There will be queues at the very few ATMs that have cash and queues at the banks to get cash out of the bank. And the maximum that you can get on a very good day is 2,000 SDGs, which is around 35 USD. So it's basically nothing for the people to have. And with the sanctions in the past few years and all these issues in Sudan, the online financial system of Sudan is very backwarded. So people can't really depend on credit cards or on using online payments. So it's a really huge issue that there is no cash in the country. In addition, the bread prices have tripled, and in 1 month, bread prices has tripled. And bread is one of the basic goods that people consume on daily basis for food. So it's also a very big problem. And the exchange rate for dollars keeps increasing every single day. At the moment, is around 56 SDG against $1. And it's all been just deteriorating dramatically.
So that was an activist in Sudan speaking to us earlier. Well, the BBC has repeatedly requested an interview with a member of the government in Sudan, but as of yet, we haven't had a response. You're watching Focus on Africa, coming to you from BBC World News. I'm Laquessa Burak. Let's remind you of other headlines across the continent. And the United States and the UK have announced that they will impose visa restrictions on anyone involved in violence, rigging and any other election-related offence during the polls in Nigeria. The US added that travel bans could well be extended to the families of those individuals who interfere in what it's calling the democratic process. Well, polls to elect a new president and parliament are set to take place on January the 16th. The Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has suspended his Chief Justice and sworn in a replacement. He's been facing accusations that he misdeclared his assets. He says, though, that he's innocent. Now, 3 students at a school in Nakuru County, northwest of the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, have been arrested for the murder of one of their teachers. The students are alleged to have stabbed the teacher, who'd confiscated their mobile phones. And a defamation case lodged by Burundi's President Pierre Nkurunziza against a French TV channel, a Belgian lawyer and a Burundian writer has begun at a court in Paris. The president claims that TV channel France 3 broadcast footage showing scenes of a massacre, while the president says that the footage was not from Burundi, but from somewhere else in West Africa. Okay, now to Kenya, where the Supreme Court has been rather busy. We've had a declaration a couple of times, a number of rulings. The debate, though, on whether Muslim students should be allowed to wear their hijabs to school appears to be rumbling on. Now, first, it was ruled that a Methodist church-sponsored school should and must allow students to wear their hijab. Well, then the Supreme Court overturned that ruling. So now schools again have the power to decide what pupils can wear on school premises. But some groups are worried that it could leave Muslim students open to discrimination. Live now to Ferdinand Omondi, who's in our Nairobi bureau. And you've been following the story, Ferdinand.
Yes, I have, Lukwesa, and according to the Supreme Council of Muslims of Kenya, the decision with the Supreme Court actually leaves more questions than answers. They believe no direction was given, just letting schools have that discretion, according to the Supreme Council of Muslims of Kenya, to decide whether to let students wear uniform or not, or have special dispensation for other people. Religious organizations might put Muslim students at risk. And I did speak to the chairman of the Supreme Council of Muslims of Kenya, Mr. Hassan Olenado, who said they may have to seek a constitutional representation over this matter.
Our fear as the Muslim community in this country is that this may raise some sort of profiling of the Muslim community. It may also create confusion in the education sector and threaten the peaceful coexistence among the various community of faith. To us as a community, we don't mind if the so-called religious or private schools put the restrictions of their whatever, we don't mind. Our major problem as a community is where taxpayers' money is involved. If we have these public schools that we as a Muslim community also pay taxes, then we have to be given an opportunity to practice our faith. Because when I want to go to a private school, it's my choice. But for the public school, it's my right.
Well, Ferdinand, it was the Methodist Church that first brought this case to the courts. What's their reaction been?
They say they accept freedom of worship, but they also have, in that spirit of freedom of worship, should be let to actually decide the rules according to the faith-based organization. Matter of fact, Bishop Mtombura, who spoke to the BBC yesterday, said this is a victory for faith-based schools which should not have rules imposed on them. And I quote, he said, when you allow people who know school rules to go imposing their own, then the freedom becomes a paradox. In his words, freedom is only freedom if served with boundaries.
Kenyans must be following this as well. What's their reaction been? What sort of chatter have you been hearing on social media, for example?
Pretty much split down the middle, because there's a lot of people who say, well, the judge is right, and they're saying, no, this is discrimination. Remember, only last week, there was a school that suspended a student who refused to shave her locks on the grounds that she was of the Rastafari faith, where they don't shave their hair. And the minister compelled the school to readmit the student without shaving their locks. So many people asking, if a Rastafari student can be readmitted with her locks on, then why don't you let students with a hijab continue in school without having to take off that hijab?
Okay, well, the question will carry on being debated. Ferdinand Omondi, thank you very much indeed. You're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Plenty more still to come, including fighting the fakes, how Morocco's saffron producers are spicing up the fight against the counterfeiters. And Mimi's got the sport as Olympic marathon champion. Gemma Sungong has her doping ban doubled to 8 years. Welcome back, I'm Lukwesa Burak. A reminder of our top story. And Sadiqa Al-Mahdi, the leader of Sudan's largest opposition party, has backed protesters in the country who are calling for President al-Bashir to stand down. Now, I probably don't have to tell you, you're more than aware that saffron is the world's most expensive agricultural product. Quite literally, it's worth its weight in gold. Now, the spice comes from the plant, Crocus sativus, or commonly known as the saffron crisis. It sells at an incredible €3.50 per gram. So with such a high price tag, it's no wonder it's become the target for counterfeiters who are trying to take advantage of the world's love affair with it. But why is it so expensive? It's not because of the plant. It's very labour intensive. From field to final packaging, you need about 20,000 saffron flowers, and that'll give you 1 kilogram of saffron. And even then, you only get 12 grams of the spice. So here's the question, when is saffron not saffron? Well, it has to come from the right country. Often it's labelled incorrectly. And secondly, when it quite simply has come from the wrong plant. It can actually be very dangerous. Now, of the countries that are designated, the world's largest producers of saffron include, you've got Iran, you've got India, Greece and Morocco in northern Africa. And it's here where the threat posed by counterfeit versions of the spice has led to saffron farmers taking steps to try and protect the integrity of their crop and ultimately their own livelihoods. Well, Lisa Marie Mishtak has more on the story.
In small plots around the mountainous region of Talouine, saffron cultivation has remained largely unchanged for centuries. Saffron farmers in southern Morocco take pride in the coveted spice they produce from the purple-petalled crocus sativas. But some are worried knockoff versions are threatening their business. In Morocco, protected designation of origin certified saffron sells for about $3 a gram, with counterfeit saffron selling for around $1 a gram. The House of Saffron works with 25 local cooperatives.
The counterfeiting that affects saffron is a recurring problem that doesn't only affect farmers in the cooperatives, but it affects people who sell saffron in the souks, at the Sunday market of Agadir or in Casablanca, where saffron is sold in plastic bags and envelopes.
The world's most expensive spice is a lifeline for many in the town, which along with a neighbouring town produces 90% of the kingdom's saffron. Reports of cheaper counterfeit saffron haven't deterred the large number of foreign tourists visiting the area.
Here we are sure it's real saffron, but in Belgium we're not really sure.
For me, it is very special because I have only seen saffron in food packets, but not with the flowers like here in the fields. It is very special for me.
The National Food Safety Office says that some non-conformities were detected in bulk sales of saffron, which had not been properly packaged or labelled. It has advised buyers to only purchase products labelled and packaged by approved and authorised sellers. Lisa Marie Mishtak, BBC News.
So if you're worried if you've got the genuine article, well, it's a very simple test. It should smell sweet, but it shouldn't taste sweet. Sweet, though, is Mimi with the sport.
Thank you very much, Luquesa. Now, going ahead with the sport, former Nigeria international Victor Moses has completed an 18-month loan move to Turkish club Fenerbahce from Chelsea. It comes after arriving in Istanbul on Wednesday. The 28-year-old has only made 5 appearances this season, with his only start coming in September's English Football League Cup win at Liverpool. And still staying with football, Arsenal take on Manchester United in the 4th round of the FA Cup at home at the Emirates today. The last time both sides met was in the English Premier League when they played out a 2-2 draw. But since then, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has taken over at United and has overseen 7 wins out of 7 and has closed an 8-point gap on the Gunners in the race to finish top 4 in the English Premier League. Now, Kenya's Olympic marathon champion Jemima Sumgog has had her doping ban doubled to 8 years after being found guilty by the sport's ruling body, the IAAF. Sumgog was found to have fabricated medical records and lied about her whereabouts by the Athletics Integrity Unit. Kenya continues to grapple with the vice, and according to the World Anti-Doping Agency, 138 Kenyan athletes had tested positive for banned substances between 2004 and August last year. 5,000-meter world champion Helen Obiri has lauded the decision to increase the ban.
I think for me it's good because when you run with somebody, maybe you hear somebody's banned and you are always being number two, something's hard for you. So what I can say, it's good. It's good to ban the athlete for life because it spoils Kenyan name. When you go outside there, somebody say you are coming from Kenya or you are used banned, so we don't celebrate our win. Like we need to celebrate. So I think it's a good stay for height above half.
Now to basketball, and Amadou Gallo-Fall, head of the NBA Africa and vice president of the NBA, says they're working hard to develop the sport further across Africa. The Basketball Without Borders initiative has been in place for many years, and an NBA Africa game has been played on the continent for the past few years. He's been speaking to the BBC about the work they're doing to grow the sport in Africa.
There's been great players over the years who've played in the NBA. I talked about Hakeem Dikembe Mutombo, who is today our global ambassador, and we see an increasing number of players from Africa coming in the NBA. And this is a lot due to initiatives that we've taken over the years, Basketball Without Borders being one of them. So having 10 players from Basketball Without Borders drafted in the NBA. So certainly gave us an impetus in 2010 to decide to go and open an office to work in the ground and localize all our development initiatives. We are in conversations with FIBA Africa about working together to continue to really build our sport on the continent. So NBA players are coming back and representing their country. I was in Lagos in early September. I think it's one of the World Cup windows, looking at the Nigerian team. Al Farouk Aminu, was there on roster. Ike Jogu, and then a host of other former NBA players like Ben Uzo and others. They are really populating the Nigerian team roster, and I think Nigeria is going to be a power to reckon with for years to come.
That's all the sports. Back to you, LaQuesta.
Mimi, thank you very much. Now, I have something in common with everybody here, including KK. They're all wearing uniforms. I wore one of those, and they were all stitched by one legendary family. They made my school uniform. Recently, I went to Zambia, country of my birth, and I was so pleased to meet the team behind the label. Well, I'm here in the heart of Lusaka. It's a buzzing Saturday afternoon. This building here meant a lot to me in the 70s and means a lot to school children now. And I'm here to meet somebody very special. Kajal, lovely to meet you.
To meet you. Come on, let's have a seat.
Let's have a look.
A lining fabric here. We've got serge, green, navy blue. A lot of this is...
Kajal Vagela is the second generation of a family business that had humble beginnings thousands of miles away on the Indian subcontinent. But it's here where, as they say, the magic happens.
We don't have an assembly line. We actually have them in groups. So those that are doing suits are in this section, school uniforms in that section.
Overalls, work suits, military wear, even chef's jackets. In fact, if you've worn a uniform in Zambia, there's a good chance it was stitched together on these sewing machines.
This is the original factory I've had since the 60s. I used to play with my best friends in the bales of fabric there.
Kajal grew up in her parents' factory and still works here now. But it was in 1962 that City Clothing was slowly built up by her father, Chandrakant.
Survival was quite a lot of hard work. Hard work in the sense that you don't work from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock and thank you very much, you go home and rest it out. Sometimes we had to stretch it out to 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, to make sure that we get it ready for the customer next day. Now I have my family in the business and they have helped us very well.
This pink one is nice.
The pink one is nice.
Isn't that one from... It makes me really proud because when I see kids walking down the street with their ties, with their jersey, with their little shirts, pleated skirt, I know that's been made by us.
I've worked here for 10 years. We feel proud that because we are addressing the nation, we are representing the nation.
And one of those they've provided for was the country's first president, Kenneth Kaunda, famous for his safari suits. But even for a firm with such a prestigious history, Zambia's clothing sector is famously tough to survive in, with competition from cheap as well as second-hand imports. And as far as the next generation goes, Kajal believes the key is in changing with the times.
I actually studied fashion merchandising in the UK and I always wanted to have my own fashion brand, and I came back because it was a no-brainer. I had this legacy to come back to.
It was a lovely trip to Lusaka. It's always good to learn something about your own history, in fact the country's history. That's it for Friday. Do make sure you have a lovely weekend. From the team here on Focus on Africa, we'll be back on Monday, and don't forget we'll be starting to build up our coverage of those all-important elections in Nigeria. If you want to get in touch, head to Twitter. I'm at Lukwesa Burak or at BBC News Africa. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.